and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
Welcome back again, Ann.
I'm still here, still alive, still recovering from my double mastectomy, but doing well. And I just want to say I appreciate the lovely notes I've gotten from viewers, both offering me sympathy and support, but mostly the ones I love are the ones who say very sincerely, you're right, I am going to go get this test or that test. It's not just breast cancer, of course, it's prostate cancer. Whatever you need, go get a test because it's much better than not getting a test.
And that's better than a lot of the news this week. And we'd like to start with positive news, but the headlines really are terrible. The Supreme Court this week allowed the Trump ban on transgender service members to go into effect while the case is still being adjudicated. And Hegseth celebrated with vulgarity and bigotry.
Well, he's on the edge with Trump, so he has to re-establish his bona fides.
As a bigot.
We'll show you that. And Trump has said to LGBTQ people, drop dead. He scrapped more than $800 million worth of research into the health of LGBTQ people.
I don't hear that many people coming to our defense, and it's disturbing.
Well, not yet.
In Florida, though,
this is good news.
Every anti-LGBTQ bill that was put in the hopper in the state legislature was defeated.
Fantastic. And in Maine, more good news. Governor Janet Mills is going to tell us how she and her attorney general beat Trump's anti-trans vendetta against her state.
And we're going to hear from out Representative in Congress, Robert Garcia, on the plight of Andre Hernandez Romero, the 19-year-old gay stylist who was sent to the El Salvador gulag by Trump.
And the fight continues. RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Department releases a bogus report on gender-affirming care, laying the groundwork to bring back conversion therapy for trans youth.
Who wrote that report?
Maybe him.
It's anonymous. That's the point. Trump has defunded the National Endowment for the Arts entirely. No more NEA.
Well, you know, if he knocks out everything, then we won't have to pay taxes because there'll be nothing to pay taxes to.
The military.
And we'll just, well, we're going to ignore them. Anyway, is there still a place for LGBTQ artists at Trump's Kennedy Center?
The Catholic bishops finally go after Trump, but just for his anti-Catholic trolling.
He loves to provoke people. We mourn the losses of singers Jill Sobule and Andy Bay.
Police in Brazil thwarted an anti-LGBTQ attack on a Lady Gaga concert.
Gaga Cabana. That's what it's called. In Australia, as in Canada, the progressive government was returned to power because everybody's so revolted by Trump's hostility.
A man died in ICE custody in Arizona from untreated HIV infection. This is apparently not uncommon.
And a gay playwright has won the Pulitzer Prize for drama.
And we'll give you the LGBTQ angles on the Tony nominations, including Jonathan Groff, who really scored in a new musical about Bobby Darin.
And the Met Gala, too.
Yes. So, again, there are a couple of cases that we've been winning at the lower courts on transgender folks in the military, and there was an injunction against throwing transgender people out.
Let's take one step back. Trump came into office, reversed the Biden policy.
Oh, yes.
Put out an executive order saying no trans people can serve in the military. But we're not going to call it anti-trans. We're going to call it anti-gender dysphoria, because anybody with that is a liar and unfit to serve.
Right.
So then all the trans people in the military went to court and said, this is wrong, unconstitutional, it's a lie. And we won every case at the lower court. And then the administration went into the Supreme Court and said, on an emergency basis, you must overrule these lower courts and let Trump's ban of military trans people take effect.
So just, and this is not a, there were no, it was no written decision. It was just, we just knew that.
Well, because it was just an emergency order to let Trump's ban go into effect while the cases are still being adjudicated in the lower courts.
And here is how Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth celebrated that decision.
No more pronouns.
Can't hear.
No more climate change obsession. No more emergency vaccine mandates. No more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
And I'll just say to the control room, we're not hearing that, so let's turn the sound up. Glad Law, which handled one of the cases, said, wait a minute, we want an injunction to continue in another case because of the animus that Hegseth just showed, and that was not addressed in the other case in the emergency order by Trump.
Well, there are no details in the Supreme Court decision from either side, from the 6 and the majority, who said we're lifting the ban on Trump's order, and they can go ahead and start throwing trans people out of the military. No written decision on why, and the dissenters, the 3 liberals, did not have a written decision either. But all of this is about the majority saying that the military has the special right to make its own decisions, that what they are doing may be discriminatory on its face against trans people, but the military occupies a special place in American life, and they have the right to make those decisions.
Of course, except for the fact that they've been serving honorably for a long time now.
Well, of course.
Since the Biden administration, they've proved themselves. We have pictures of 3 of the plaintiffs. They are Nicholas, from left to right, Nicholas Talbot, who's a 2nd lieutenant, Major Dr. Olivia Stellick, who's a West Point graduate, and Navy Commander Emily Schilling. These are all very brave people doing great work for the United States of America, and now they're just being told, along with 4,200 other transgender people,
at a minimum,
you're out.
And it's not that their colleagues in the military are complaining about them. This is just about bigots on high. But here's the important thing. How they are performing has no bearing on any of this. It is not about their performance, and going into court and proving their great performance is not going to make a difference, because the only question on the table is whether the administration has the right to make this order. They don't have to prove it's valid or useful. All they have to prove is that they have the right as commander-in-chief to make this order. And that is what the majority on the Supreme Court is deciding in overturning the temporary restraining order.
It sounds like they're sunk.
Very possibly. Very possibly.
I mean, my God, the other big thing, the Supreme Court, they heard that case about funding for religious schools this week, and it looks like they're just going to, we're going to have full funding of religious schools in the United States of America, ending the separation of church and state entirely.
I would say that's a slightly different angle, but it's really important that people understand that the military has a special place in American life and is given the right to do things that no other institution can do.
Okay. The question will arise, does the Trump administration have the right to slash almost any kind of research at the NIH dealing with LGBTQ people? $800 million worth of research. I mean, this is like they really want us dead. 669 grants they canceled, nearly half of them related to LGBTQ health.
They complained about radical gender ideology being as what these grants were, the research, radical gender ideology.
Artificial and non-scientific categories, including amorphous equity objectives. God forbid, we should look at health disparities in this country and try to do better for the people who are being more impacted.
No, that is exactly contrary to how this administration operates. They don't want to look at any disparities. They want to claim that we are all already equal, and any research or programs
except for trans in the military, they're not equal.
No, well, they are liars, and so they must be thrown out.
All right.
But this canceling of grants and research also includes housing assistance for people with HIV.
HIV research has been hit particularly hard. There was one that laid the groundwork for the use in adolescence of a medication regime that could prevent HIV infections. No, I mean there is going to be a huge resurgence of HIV in the United States and of course around the world, where we have abandoned all the countries that we were helping keep it under control.
Now here's the one good part of this. This is all part of the budget proposal from Trump and his OMB director Russell Vought of Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation that we've been talking about forever. When Trump submitted this, or when the administration submitted this budget to Congress, congressional Republicans were appalled. They may not approve of all of this. I mean, Trump may beat them into submission. God knows he's done that on everything else. But there's pushback already. Some of this stuff may be restored.
And for those of you who are not LGBTQ, Brittany Charlton, who is a professor at Harvard of Public Health, she's been canceled, her grants. She said, ending research on disease threats to gender and sexual minority groups would inevitably rebound on the entire population. When other people are sick around you, it does impact you, even if you think it doesn't.
Well, and also as you cut various parts of the population out of existence, basically, or out of recognition, the pie, or the group of people who are recognized as legitimate, is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I want to know when those of us who've been cut out are going to, because we vastly outnumber the people they want to preserve, when are we all going to rise up and get rid of them?
Well, there certainly is a pushback on these massive Medicaid cuts that they want to make.
Oh, yeah.
Including from people like Josh Hawley and Laura Loomer, the nutcase, who was a close advisor to Trump. So they're saying, this is your base that you are cutting off, and you better not do it. All right, let's move on to Florida.
Well, I have one little side note from the administration that sort of was interesting.
Too, but okay.
We can do them or not. But someone analyzing the moving of Mike Waltz, who was the security advisor to the UN job, someone who was writing about it said this was the emasculation of Mike Waltz. He has now been assigned to the girl job of UN representative, because like 8 out of 9 of the last UN reps have been women.
Interesting.
From Madeleine Albright to Condi Rice to, on and on and on. And that's true.
You'd have to go back to Adlai Stevenson to find a guy.
Before you get a man. No. I think Madeleine was the first, but there's a long list. So now they're all sneering at Mike Waltz for being given the girl job.
Well, I mean, frankly, we're pulling out of the UN essentially, and it might as well,
what's the point?
Why does Mel move its headquarters out of New York? So in Florida, got a picture of Nadine Smith there. She runs Forever Equality Florida.
A hero.
Every anti-LGBTQ bill there was defeated, including one that would have banned pride flags flown on government buildings. So
now, this year, that's only 4 bills that were defeated, but that's because last year there were 22 proposed, and they defeated 21 of them.
Right.
So the right wing has seen the error of its ways and has pulled back, but this year the count is 0 for the right wing.
Another one that was defeated would have prevented governments from using the preferred pronouns for people who are transgender, and other bills targeting DEI. So, and look, They were on the ground in Equality, Florida, 400 activists lobbying, 16,000 emails. It doesn't just get done. You have to do it.
They have made a very concerted effort over the last few years, because Florida, you know, with DeSantis, how are you going to get past them and the all-Republican legislature? But that's how relentless Equality Florida has been, and congratulations and thank you to them for their great work, and you can see that it can pay off if you work hard enough and have enough people doing it.
And we've told you all about how Maine Governor Janet Mills has stood up to Trump. You saw her do it right there in the White House on a governor's meeting where she said, "I'll see you in court. You're trying to go after me and my funding." And they did go to court, and she's going to explain here how they won.
I stood in the White House, and when confronted by the President of the United States, I told him I'd see him in court. Well, I did see him in court, and we won. I am so pleased to say that Aaron Fry's able representation of the state of Maine has resulted in a binding agreement by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins and all her staff, whereby they agree to refrain from freezing, terminating, or otherwise interfering with the state of Maine's access to USDA funds allocated to any official or agency or department of the state of Maine based on alleged violations of Title IX. This resulted from a USDA letter on April 2nd from Brooke Rollins, which I have described earlier to people as something that smacked of a ransom note written by a school child. A demand letter that was outrageous at the time, remains outrageous today. We immediately filed suit 5 days later, filing a complaint and a motion for temporary restraining order. And 4 days after that, federal judge John Woodcock, a seasoned, decades-long serving federal judge in Maine, issued a 70-page opinion, a decision that issued a temporary restraining order against the United States Department of Agriculture based on his conclusion that the state's likelihood of success is extraordinarily high, one of his many conclusions in that decision. We were very pleased to receive that decision. And now, on May 2nd, just 1 month after the USDA's letter, the USDA has backed down, and they have agreed to stop freezing funds for the school lunch program that feeds 172,000 kids in Maine. Freezing without due process. Freezing without any rationale. Freezing without any congressional basis. And so I want to thank the Attorney General for achieving this result. And it's good to feel a victory like this. We took them to court, and we won.
You know, the Democrats have a strong bench of governors out there.
Yes.
Each week, whether it's J.B. Pritzker or Maura Healey in Massachusetts or Janet Mills in Maine, and we could name half a dozen more.
And the ones who are, you know, not acting like her need to start acting like her.
Absolutely.
Instead of like Kathy Hochul in New York saying, "Oh, we'll name Penn Station after you if you give us $1 billion." God, don't try it.
Well, I would put her in the middle ground somewhere. There are worse.
Of course.
Yeah. But thank you, Janet Mills. Thank you to Maine for standing up. And
thank you, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs,
Yeah.
Democrat. She vetoed 3 anti-transgender bills that were passed by Republicans in the state legislature, restricted trans Arizonans from updating their gender markers on their birth certificates. She said, look, this bill's not going to lower any costs. It's not going to increase opportunity. It's not going to enhance security. And I encourage the legislature to focus on real issues. And she is determined to flip the legislature, as they did in Michigan, and make it Democrat.
Well, and you can do it in what has been a red state, Arizona. I mean, we've had some Democratic wins, but Arizona's a tough state, and she's standing up and talking directly against them. It's fabulous.
And we've been telling you all about the plight of this gay stylist from Venezuela who was supposed to come here to San Diego to get his green card or whatever, and he gets thrown into the El Salvador gulag because he had some tattoos on his arms that some right-wing nut didn't like. Probably didn't like it because he was gay, and so he got thrown in. So Robert Garcia, gay congressman from Long Beach, California, spoke on the floor of the House of Congress about this.
Of due process, not just now for U.S. citizens, but for people that are here, whether it's a legal status or because they've been invited to this country to apply for asylum. Now, we've heard tonight, and I want to go ahead and speak a little bit more about Andre Romero. This young gentleman right here, he is a gay hairstylist, makeup artist, who came to the United States with an asylum appointment. The United States government gave Andre an appointment to show up to the border so that he could claim asylum using our process that we created. He shows up with his appointment, and what happens? He gets interrogated through the process. His initial screening is positive, and then he essentially gets taken at the border from that screening directly to an El Salvador prison in a country he knows nothing about, and in a process that eliminated his right through the court and due process asylum system that we've created in this country. What kind of America is this, where we are doing this to people that are seeking asylum? We're sending them to a foreign prison. And I want to note, Andre's family describes him as someone that is sweet, that's kind, that's gentle. And yet we're sending him to a notorious prison in a very vulnerable position. I also want to note that folks, an agent said, oh, well, he has some tattoos. Yes, he has a crown tattoo reflective of a festival back in his home city and state in Venezuela. It has nothing to do with gangs. He's never been convicted of anything to do with gangs. But because an ICE agent, who was, by the way, a disgraced former police officer, made these claims, Andre is now in a foreign prison, and his family and his lawyers have not heard anything about him in weeks.
And we still don't know anything about how he's doing. Garcia went down there to El Salvador. We had a little demonstration in New York about it, but not enough is being done. He was on 60 Minutes, Andre's case, but it's still, and he's got a good lawyer, and she's working on it, but.
I have to say, it still warms my heart to hear the words gay hairstylist, makeup artist on the floor of the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Very nice. And Robert Garcia, another great, aggressive member of Congress.
We need, you all need to do it. What else are you doing? There's nothing to do in Congress.
Yep.
All right.
They just confirmed another Elon Musk henchman as the head of the Social Security Administration. Yep. Look for that to be destroyed.
Okay. Now, a disturbing case in Boston. Women were at a conference at the Liberty Hotel, and we have a picture of them. Ansley Baker and her girlfriend, Liz Victor.
Liz on the left, Ansley on the right.
They were at a Kentucky, it wasn't a conference, it was a Kentucky Derby party.
Yeah.
And they're both cisgendered women, lesbians, and they go into the restroom. There's a big line for the restroom, so somebody must have complained, that's a man, go in there. And so a man goes in, this
security guard
banging on the door, get out. And, when they come out,
Ansley comes out. Whoever was in line who turned them in said, they're in the stall together. No, they weren't in the stall together.
Yeah, get him out of here. He's a creep.
Yeah.
See, this is the stuff they're all pumped up with from watching Fox News 24 hours a day, is that, trans are taking over and you got to stop them and you have a right to yell and scream at them and beat them up. So At first, they tried a cover story or something at the hotel, and finally they admitted, this is terrible. They suspended the security officer. Suspended? And they're going to train everybody. And
the hotel apologized to Liz and Ansley, which was, of course, the right thing to do.
And then there's this horrible, the Health and Human Services under Robert Kennedy is hell-bent on ending gender-affirming care for young people. So they issue this lengthy but anonymous report basically endorsing conversion therapy for transgender youth, full of lies.
It's a follow-up on the Cass report done in England, which was also bad, but this is even worse because the Cass report at least said that some people need some treatment and are helped by it, hormones or whatever. But this report out of HHS here says none of that should be allowed. There should be talking therapy, and talking therapy is their code word for conversion therapy. But the idea that this was written anonymously with no names attached.
And boy, did they get it done fast.
It's a report on treatment of gender dysphoria in children. This is their new favorite phrase. That's why they're throwing people out of the military. It's why they want...
You're sick.
Yeah, you're not just misled.
By the way, following up on your comment about Mike Waltz being put over to the UN,
yep.
Who's going to take over at as the national security? They're looking at Rick Grinnell, who is
yes.
at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
He's a self-hating gay man.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Kennedy Center, I said last week that LGBTQ artists should boycott Kennedy Center, but the Leonard Bernstein's children, there they are, and an old picture, of course. Leonard's long dead, as is their mother. This was, of course, a gay man, bisexual, and they write in the New York Times, well, I know a lot of people are pulling out, but we think by letting people hear our father's music, it will heal things for people that, you don't have to play the Kennedy Center for people to hear his music.
And these kids, these adult children, in writing this op-ed in the New York Times, refer to people, other artists pulling out of the Kennedy Center because they don't like the new Trump version. They never once say that their father was gay
right.
or bisexual as a reason for his heirs to pull his music out of performance
there. Or as we
there.
reported last week, all gay events at the Kennedy Center have been canceled. All the World Pride events have been canceled.
Yes.
Where's the solidarity with your daddy?
Maybe we ought to call up Rick Grinnell and say, you know, Leonard Bernstein was gay.
They say whatever royalties we make, we'll give it to the ACLU. Not enough.
Also, the Trump proposed budget has a proposal for the Kennedy Center to give them 6 times more money than they have been getting in recent years. Why? Because he wants it rebuilt to be more to his taste. I'm sure it'll be gold everywhere.
Guilt.
He wants the front pillars, which are lovely, slim pillars, to be covered with stone or marble.
And where's the money for that going to come from? The total defunding of the NEA. Let's just stay with the arts.
Okay.
They have his budget calls for the elimination of the NEA.
And excuse me for going backwards from the arts, but the HHS report on treatment for kids with gender dysphoria is at the same time that the budget has terminated real research on treatment. This was supposed to be a report analyzing treatment options, but they have canceled all treatment for kids.
Now they don't give a damn about anti-LGBTQ bigotry, but they're trying to act like they care about anti-Semitism, even though the Republicans are basically an anti-Semitic party at this point. And they're passing this anti-Semitism bill through the Congress with a lot of Democratic support, which would essentially say that criticism of Israel can be defined as anti-Semitism. So that's the thing that's the horse that they're riding. And it's just, although, hold it, They had to add a clause that said, saying that the Jews killed Christ is not anti-Semitism. This was on behalf of Marjorie Taylor Greene. They put that in the bill.
Because that's her line, I guess.
You're Christ killers.
Oh, and to go back to
Come on.
All right.
What could be more anti-Semitic?
Yeah, well, here I'm going back to the military for a minute, too, because in Illinois, Leanne Withrow of Springfield, who is a civilian employee of the Illinois National Guard, but a former staff sergeant in the Guard and the winner of many awards, including the Abraham Lincoln Medal of Freedom, trans woman is filing a class action complaint against the Army National Guard because of the Trump bathroom policy that will not allow her to use the women's restroom at the Illinois National Guard headquarters, or anyone else to use the restroom appropriate to their gender presentation.
Okay. And going back to cuts to youth, you know, they're cutting the, this is a correction. We said that they're cutting funds for the suicide prevention hotline, the 999 line, especially for LGBTQ youth. And we gave a Canadian number that said that they were going to pick up the slack. This was reported online, but it turns out not to be true. That number is for Trans Lifeline. It's not a general suicide prevention for youth.
All right. So, yes, you mentioned that the Supreme Court looks like it's going to let Oklahoma spend public money on religious charter schools.
Right, completely religious, very little control.
And Oklahoma's Ryan Walters, the education commissioner, says that he's still pushing Bible in the curriculum in these schools, and now he wants the social studies curriculum to include discussion of how the 2020 election was stolen from Trump.
That's right. But at least the Attorney General of Oklahoma was there in the Supreme Court defending the separation of church and state, for goodness sake. Speaking of church and state, the Catholic bishops are all of a sudden, they're upset with Trump over mocking the Pope. You know, everybody saw this thing that Pope dressed up, Trump dressed as the Pope, which he put out, which the White House put out. And so the Catholic Bishops' Conference in New York said there's nothing clever or funny about that image. We just buried the Pope. You do not mock us. Although Cardinal Dolan, when he was asked about it, said, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about."
Well, Trump loves to, as they say, poke the bear. And this is his way of getting everyone up in arms and ignore all the other issues we're talking about. And I think he was really successful in doing this here.
They were even condemned. He was even condemned by the Ancient Order of Hibernians, our old nemesis there, and the conservative Irish. They're not that conservative anymore.
Look, I'm a little offended by the extent to which this conclave is getting. The coverage is just unbelievable. It's worse than the Kentucky Derby over the weekend. They're going after all the possible.
It's a costume drama. They're both costume dramas.
Oh my God!
But the thing is, it's not even a drama. All they could show on television was guys going up and reading the same thing, saying, I'm not gonna say anything, I'm not gonna say anything, I'm not gonna say anything. That's all they were showing for like an hour. And then the doors are gonna close and you're not gonna know what's going on.
It would be great if now I don't even want the leaks. I don't care.
Right. Exactly. This is,
it's half the programming on all the news shows now.
It's
our special correspondent in Rome.
Costume drama.
Well, it's just nonsense.
In San Antonio, they're having a mayoral runoff on June 7th between out lesbian U.S. Air Force Undersecretary Gina Ortiz-Jones, a Democrat, and the Republican former Texas Secretary of State Rolando Pablos. She got 27% of the vote in the first round.
Which was the most of any candidate.
He got 17, and I think the other also-rans were also Democrats, so it looks good for her.
That would be great. San Antonio has done some progressive things in recent years.
Yeah. And then out lesbian Angie Craig has declared for the United States Senate from Minnesota as Tina Smith retires after next year.
But she's not in such great shape in the vote because the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, who is a native
American,
yes, has twice as many votes as her in the polling so far.
Yes.
This is where Tim Walz is the governor, and Flanagan was talked a lot about last year because she would have taken over as governor of Minnesota if he'd been elected vice president. So she's got a little head start there. But
Angie would be the first out lesbian mother in the Congress.
Really?
Yes.
Of any of them? Well, and in the Senate, she's in the Congress. You mean in the Senate?
Well,
she's running for the Senate.
She's already a mother, and she's already in the Congress. You're right. She is the first out lesbian mother in Congress.
She is a popular figure in Minnesota. She's done very well, but it's going to be a tough race with her against Peggy Flanagan for that Senate seat.
Update on the Republican mess in Virginia, where they went after the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor, John Reed, because he's gay, and they said he was going to porn sites or something. Basically, it's that kind of a scandal that the governor, what's his name? What's the governor's name? Youngkin said you should resign, you should step down. Everybody's had to pull back, although the new candidate for governor, who is the lieutenant governor now, Winsome Earl Sears, she doesn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Whatever she says, he's made up his mind. He's going to stay, but she's
very anti-LGBTQ.
We hope this brings down the ticket. But former Governor George Allen, no friend to our community,
horrible.
Of course, he's standing up for John Reed.
Strange. All right, in New York State, a couple of things going on. In the Senate Education Committee in the New York State Legislature, the committee has just voted out to go to the floor a bill that would, that says it would be okay for cities to bar trans kids from sports events. And this is weird because the Democrats control the Assembly and the Senate, but and this is the Senate. But 3 Democrats voted with 5 Republicans to get this bill out onto the floor.
Well,
so,
I think we can stop it in the Assembly, I hope. The Assembly also passed a death with dignity bill for the first time. And
it's just scary when Democrats in New York State's legislature start voting that way. And in Saratoga Springs, New York, good news there, the city supported trans and gender expansive students. So now the U.S. Department of Education is coming into Saratoga Springs to investigate them because the federal government wants to stop everything at every level, no matter how big or small your town is.
What are they going to do to the city of Spokane, Washington? They passed an ordinance enhancing protections for LGBTQ people with a focus on protecting trans folks. They updated the Human Rights Code to define gender-affirming care and ensure equal protection for LGBTQ people.
And what are they going to do to the city of Salt Lake, where the nicely progressive mayor there, Aaron Mendenhall, has found a workaround for the state legislature passing a law saying only city flags could be flown.
Right.
And she said, okay, so we're going to have city flags that are incorporating Juneteenth imagery for our black citizens, rainbow flags for our LGBTQ citizens, and specifically trans flags for trans visibility.
Well, that's our form of rebellion. When the South rebelled against integration, they put Confederate symbols on all their state flags.
It's true. Well, that's what's happening in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And we should just let you know that Reclaim Pride here in New York, which runs the Queer Liberation March, the alternative, non-commercial parade on Pride Day on the last Sunday of June, June 29th this year, has come out with announced its theme and its route for the march.
Resist, reclaim, rejoice.
I like that.
And so we assemble at 11 a.m. at the New York City AIDS Memorial, not down at the Stonewall, AIDS Memorial, which is 7th Avenue there on 12th Street, and then marching north to what is called Lenape Circle, the Lenape people were the original people in Manhattan.
But you may know it as Columbus Circle.
It's also where the Trump International Hotel is, so
yes.
it has a point.
So I'm sure there will be a protest at that point and then dispersing into Central Park. They're putting up a new website soon, queermarch.org, so you can check for that and get all the details.
Okay. And we'll be in Brighton Beach this weekend,
Saturday,
on
the 10th.
Gathering at 11 a.m. on the boardwalk there in Coney Island.
Yep.
There'll be a notice about this in our email. Sign up for our email. We got lots of news in it. We got some extra things. Go to gayusatv.org and you'll see.
We have Angie Craig's video this week that is quite wonderful and shows her wife and kids.
Right.
Yeah. But Brighton Beach on Saturday, on the boardwalk at Brighton Beach at the Riegelman Boardwalk.
Okay. And somebody who
And we're marching for trans immigrants who cannot march for themselves given the Trump administration.
That's one of the reasons we're going.
Yep.
And St. Louis, trans Kelsey Elam, E-L-E-M, 25, shot dead by her boyfriend after an argument. The family said that it escalated into the man they call Tino punching Elam so badly in the mouth that she started bleeding, and they tried to get help, and then her gunshot was heard, and she was dead. It's a very tragic story.
She was someone who had worked so hard. She had 2 jobs. She had her own apartment. She had her own car. She was really ambitious to live a successful life.
She wrote a social media post just the other day. My transition was so epic. It was a surprise to me, but a surprise to y'all. And she said, now I'm happy enough to embrace it. It took a lot for me to get here. I'm now dead.
25. And in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a tragic house fire has taken the life of Jill Sobule at age 66. Freak fire. She was the famous singer-songwriter who did I Kissed a Girl in 1995. This is not the Katy Perry version.
Right.
Katy Perry stole the title, but this was the original I Kissed a Girl, and the first out gay song to hit the Billboard Top 20. She was an activist. She did songs about capital punishment.
She was due to perform next week. She also
anorexia, MAGA.
There was a stage show of her songs that was in 2023 called F. 7th grade, which was nominated for a Drama Desk Award.
She was openly bisexual and very popular as a 70s kind of liberated person.
And then Andy Bay, B-E-Y, a jazz singer, pianist, and composer whose silky rich bass baritone and 4-octave vocal range placed him among the greatest interpreters of the American songbook since Nat King Cole, died at the age of 85 in New Jersey, a black man singing jazz, a field in which women had long dominated. He was out gay and out about being HIV positive. Yeah,
30 years ago he came out about being HIV positive, and Nat King Cole was his hero. And he was, as a black jazz singer, he was thought of as sort of unusual because he was doing more Nat King Cole type songs as well as soul and R&B songs.
And in terms of being out, he said, you have to kind of put yourself out there if you're going to make somebody believe something.
Interesting. And then in New York, Stephen Moe Hannon, 78 years old, actor, died of a heart attack, leaves his husband, Gary Widland. He was in Cats. He was...
Had 3 roles in Cats.
Was a street busker, was in the original, not the original, but the modern original production of Pirates of Penzance. We'll get to the latest production later, but 1981.
He also did a Jolson musical.
Yeah, so those are those for this week. Okay. International news.
By the way, in terms of the papal election, Cardinal Tobin of Newark, who's supposed to be one of the quote-unquote liberals, but none of them are, he was famous as a young priest for working with people with AIDS in Chicago. He's one of the cardinals here. He said, I don't see a compelling theological reason why the Pope couldn't name a woman cardinal.
Exactly. But others can. Others can see a theological reason.
You can see under all those cassocks, but there don't seem to be any.
Not that we know of.
In Greece?
Oh, gorgeous wedding picture of a lesbian couple in Greece. The first to get married in Santorini. They're from Brooklyn. Carly Powers that's
Brooklyn
wrong.
Is
Their names are Brooklyn and Carly Powers. They're from Texas, and they're the first same-sex couple to marry on the island of Santorini. Same-sex marriage was legalized in Greece in February of 2024. It's just a lovely picture.
All right, in Rio de Janeiro, the civil police say that they thwarted a planned bomb attack by a hate group targeting children, teens, and the LGBT community at Lady Gaga's record-breaking concert held at the Copacabana Beach this week that drew over 2 million attendees. My goodness.
Well, it's known as the biggest concert ever.
It was an elaborate plot. They discovered explosives, Molotov cocktails. They caught these characters.
Targeting the LGBTQ community and kids. They were going after kids, too.
Yeah.
They must have done an elaborate undercover operation to find them.
Right.
In France, a Senate bill acknowledging the legal persecution of 10,000 gays, mostly men, from 1945 to 1982 was adopted. It still has to go to the National Assembly. The right wing succeeded in defeating proposals to add reparations to it, so it's just sorry. No.
And the English Football Association has now banned trans women in soccer, or what they call football. I mean, they'd been fine with it. The players had been fine with it. But they're all, I would say, taking advantage of this decision by the High Court, which says, no, trans people aren't covered by as women under the Equalities Act, but that has not, they're not supposed to discriminate against trans people, and that's what they're doing.
Well, a trans judge in England is going to appeal that Supreme Court decision to the European Court of Human Rights.
And then in Australia, as in Canada, the progressive candidate for Prime Minister won. Anthony Albanese was reelected, getting what they call a Trump bump. The opposition leader, right-winger Peter Dutton, lost his own seat in Canada, in Australia, as the guy who was the opposition leader in Canada did. Unlike Trump, this guy Dutton was gracious enough to say the result was historic for the Labour Party. He congratulated the woman who beat him, who defeated him in his seat.
Great. There's a report that in Quebec, Canada, schools are regressing on LGBTQ issues, especially boys, that the clubs, like the Gay Straight Alliance clubs or whatever, are diminishing, fewer participants, none in some places.
What do they attribute that? Fear, or we're more integrated, perhaps?
Well, except
it's like I have friends who don't go to gay bars anymore. They just go to bars.
Well, except part of the report is that pride flags are being attacked.
Oh.
So that's not good. And speaking of flags, since we're carrying that through line today, the Eurovision Song Contest is banning performers from incorporating pride flags in their performances. The audience can wave pride flags, but not the contestants.
So after Germany designated the right-wing party there as extremist, Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, said that the classification is tyranny in disguise.
Oh, for God's sake.
I mean, they want to root. They know what happens when you let extremism get out of control in Germany.
Look, forget that. They are doing nothing but censorship all day long in this country, getting rid of trans people LGBTQ people, black people, women. They're just cutting everybody out of everything. And then they have the gall to complain that a right-wing fascist group in Germany is being controlled.
How long before what we do on this show, and of course on many other programs, will be said to be hurting children and must be stopped?
I'm sure there are people who think that already. But we like to think we're enhancing people's
And we appreciate
lives.
our young viewers and our older viewers and our gay viewers and our non-gay viewers. All right.
In AIDS news.
A man who died in ICE custody this week from complications for untreated HIV could have been helped with routine blood tests. They just don't do this. Now, apparently the person didn't present about it.
Yeah, Ethiopian undocumented immigrant, 45 years old, awaiting deportation.
And now we're going to deport people to Libya.
Yes. Gaddafi's dead.
Yes. It's like, when they tried to do this in Britain, where they were going to send them to Rwanda, to some at least halfway decent places, but that was stopped by their high court. Yeah. Our high court is saying, go get him out of here. And the abortion pill case, the Trump administration pulled back on that.
Yeah.
But I think they're just laying in wait for a better way to bring the case.
Maybe. I couldn't bear to read the details.
I did.
Thank you. I'll get around to them.
They're looking for a stronger way to ban the pill.
All right.
Because they control the FDA now, so all they have to do is just declare it's no good anymore.
We will now move on to the Tony nominations.
Well, I mean, let's start with the fact that Brandon Jacobs Jenkins won the Pulitzer Prize for Purpose, a play I like very much, on Broadway.
And a Tony nomination.
And he got a Tony nomination for Best Play. And then I also saw out Jonathan Groff, who's nominated for Best Actor in a Musical for Just in Time. And he's really, you're in a nightclub with Bobby Darin, and it's a tour de force. Bobby died at 37 in 1970.
Oh, those sharks, babe.
Dated Connie Francis and married Sandra Dee. It's at the Circle in the Square. It's turned into a nightclub to great effect. I had a great time. And then the other Tony nominations. One of the also rans for the Pulitzer was Cola Scola from O'Mary, and O'Mary has been nominated for Best Play, and Cole for Best Actor as Mary Todd Lincoln, and Conrad Ricamora as gay Abraham Lincoln.
It's amazing to me. I mean, first of all, I was surprised. I love the show. I love Cole. I love them all. But I couldn't believe it moved to Broadway in the first place. Right. And then that it was a hit on Broadway. And now that it has all these Tony nominations.
Cole was interviewed on CBS Sunday Morning this week, and there's a longer version of it that I'm going to link to. It's a half-hour version of this interview, where I will just tell you a wonderful explanation of the use of pronouns that they use.
Good. I like the interviews where he's asked, so did you do a lot of research to play Mary Lincoln? And he says, I very deliberately did no research.
Yes. Mo Rocca, by the way, at CBS Sunday Morning, who's out gay, did the interview. And then out Brooks Ashmanskas, who was terrific in almost everything he is, as nominated for Best Featured Actor for Smash, and out Taylor Trench was nominated for Featured Actor in a Musical in Floyd Collins at Lincoln Center, which I also liked, and I thought Taylor was sort of the heart of the show. And then Cara Young, who's at the center of this picture from Purpose, with the crowd scene, little family scene, you got it up there, maybe.
Yeah, there it is.
That's Cara in the middle. She's nominated for Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Play as a queer character, and the others are all nominated too. This is her 4th consecutive nomination, and she won for Pearly Victorious in 2024. And I just want to alert you that Yellowface, which I also loved, it's not on Broadway anymore, it got some nominations. It's going to be on PBS on May 16th, so you could all see it.
And Kimberly Bellflower was nominated as the writer, or a writer, of John Proctor is the Villain, which is a takeoff on The Crucible.
And the Tony Awards are going to be from Radio City Music Hall, hosted by out Cynthia Erivo. And that's going to be Sunday, June 8th. At 8 o'clock on CBS.
More on her in a moment, but tell us what you thought of the new Pirates and Real Women Have Curves.
I like more traditional Gilbert and
productions.
Sullivan.
Me
But David,
too.
and David Hyde Pierce, who's there in the center, out gay actor, sort of fulfills that. The others are good, and the other shot that I have there on the you have Jinx Monsoon and out trans actor there on the right in the role. It's a mashup of Gilbert and Sullivan songs. It's not even all Pirates of Penzance, so not my cup of tea. But I had some fun with David Hyde Pierce. And then Real Women Have Curves is on Broadway as a musical. And you may have seen the movie. It's a very winning cast and a moving story about undocumented immigrant women working in an LA sweatshop in the Reagan era. It couldn't be more timely, and I hope it melts some hearts.
Have you seen On Swift Horses, the new gay male movie that's on? It's I want to say it's on. I think it's streaming, but the Daily Beast calls it one of the best movies of 2025, and with incredible sex scenes.
What's it about?
Two gay men.
Okay. You think that's all we do? All right. We also go to fashion shows. At the Met Gala, the theme was Black Dandyism, and Coleman Domingo was one of the organizers, and there he is. He said, no one has taken the time to say that the Black Dandy is a revolution. And I heard Al Sharpton, who was at this thing, say, Black Dandyism was kind of a rebellion that we did when we weren't allowed to express ourselves.
So on the left, go back to Coleman. On the left is his outer garment, a tribute to Andre Leon Talley, and then he took that off and has that gorgeous suit underneath.
And then some of the other people who were there, Janelle Monáe. I'm
sorry we're not showing her outer garment, but which looked like a box, and then you take it off and there's that gorgeous outfit.
Sha'Carri Richardson.
Yeah,
Sha'Carri Richardson. There she is, the runner. And then Cole again. This is how Cole showed up at the Met Gala. And then Cynthia Erivo's costume there.
They're everywhere.
And Barry Diller is out officially. It's...
Please.
Well, there have been a good many men in my life. There's only ever been one woman. He's writing a book.
He wrote a memoir. He comes out and I'm gay. He's 83 years old. We've all known it for 60 years. Even Diane von Furstenberg, his wife, says, I knew it.
He says, he talks about the quiet suffering he felt by hiding. The guy is rich as Croesus, and a fear of exposure that stunted any chance of my having a fulfilling personal life. Oh, boy.
And then the book is all about him and Diane. The excerpt from the book is all about him and Diane and nothing about the men.
Should we show our little 17 seconds on Celebrity Wheel of Fortune? Matt Walsh, who's on HBO.
LGBTQ affirming books to public school libraries so that all kids can feel seen and heard. Because let's get to the business of winning more money here. Okay, grab those devices.
Pat Sajak changes the topic very quickly.
He does not like gay people, Pat Sajak.
Oh, there had a lot of gay people on the show.
Now, speaking of liking or disliking,
and
Luigi Mangione, the killer of the health executive, who's become so popular for some unknown reason.
Well, a folk hero of sorts.
Well,
he's a murderer.
They're doing a play that's playing in San Francisco in June. Luigi the musical. It's sold out.
Well, this is America today. Adam Lambert will play the role of Judas in the Hollywood Bowl's production of Jesus Christ Superstar, opposite Cynthia Erivo as Jesus. That's going to be August 1st to 3rd.
And so we're going to be in Brighton Beach on Saturday at the Brighton Beach Pride March. And then, if you're not going there, you can go to the Rainbow Book Fair at the LGBTQ Center here on West 13th Street. It'll be on from noon to 6 p.m., so you can actually do both.
Queer resistance, no stopping us.
That's it. See you next week.